This is the Isle of Palms podcast, produced by Island Vibes, the Isle of Palms upscale monthly publication. The Isle of Palms podcast is all about the people, places, and events that make this island a slice of paradise.
And here we are for another podcast, Isle of Palms podcast, and I'm very honored, Chief, that you took the time to do this today. So we've got with us Isle of Palms Police Chief Cornett, and I'm happy you're here, man. Thanks for taking the time, like I said.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be a part of this.
I really got to know you a little bit at the rec center when they had the Hurricane Expo, and I knew that you're a very transparent guy, and it's kind of cool, you know? And I was really intrigued when you were talking about your past, and then I learned about Sarah. Chief Cornett met Sarah in Colombia, and he hated the pizza that he just didn't like the pizza, but he really liked the lady that was serving the pizza, and that became his wife. So that's a cool story, Chief. I really like that. You were in Colombia and you were working with the police department up there, and you were promoted to fugitive team. What do they do?
I went from being assigned to what we call the community response team, who did a lot of different things and worked primarily nights. And the chief asked me one day, he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, Chief. What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Tell me what you want to do." I said, "Start a fugitive team." He said, "Roger that, start a fugitive team." So my job was specifically to locate people who had violent criminal warrants and they were trying to avoid apprehension. So they were running, hiding, or whatever it was. So it was my job to find those individuals and take them into custody. And my wife did not think that was a very fun job. It was fun, but I don't think she saw it as entertaining as some people might.
How long were you with the Columbia Police Department?
I think it was about 7, almost 8 years before I decided to jump into my next endeavor in law enforcement.
Are you a South Carolinian, or where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Bismarck, North Dakota. And it throws everybody off. I like to, when I do talks to groups, I like to let them guess what state I'm from. I've had one group I've talked to that guessed North Dakota.
It gets kind of cold up there. I used to have a sales job up there, and it gets cold driving around up there for sure. When you were with the organized crime organization to find the bad guys, so to speak, because Sarah really encouraged you to look for other things because you're her man, you're her husband. She didn't want you to be at harm. You found a job at Springdale. Is that correct?
When I first met Sarah, I was in special ops, and I went to patrol. And then I went back to fugitives, and she said, "Hey, you need to do something different." So then I became supervisor for organized crime and narcotics, which is gangs and narcotics. And then she said, "Hey, you need to do something different." And I was reading a newspaper of all things. I think it was probably one of the last times I read a physical newspaper where I held it for many years. There was an ad in there for a chief job in Springdale. And I joked with my wife and said, "Hey, I think I should put for that job." And she's like, "Yeah, you should." And I was like, "No." And then I saw it like several months later, I saw it again. And I told her again, and she said, "You really should." And then the chief asked me if I was applying. And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "You should." So I did. And it was, I was lucky. I got the job.
That's great. My understanding is that the Springdale is it's a really small little town. It has like about 4,000 people in it.
It is.
It's a little smaller than the Isle of Palms as far as residents, huh?
100%. Yes. It was about a little less than 4,000 residents, and it was 4 square miles. We only had we had more stoplights than we have here, but not a lot. And we didn't have the tourism we had here, but it was such a small, close-knit community that really helped me to dive into community policing and the importance of building those relationships with the community that you serve. And my kids knew all the people that lived there, and they knew my kids, and they'd call them by name, call them out when they did bad things.
If you were the son or the daughter of a police chief, you have to be careful with what you do, for sure, I would think. This is a good time to bring up a picture there of everybody can see it right here that are watching the video, but that's your family right there, huh?
It is, yeah. So
you got 3 boys and a girl?
4 boys and 1 girl, and
wow,
it's never boring, that's for sure.
And my understanding is you got a 4-legged member of the family too. Is that correct?
We do. We've got, because having that many kids isn't enough, so you got to add to it. So we have a little dog. His name is Alfie. I call him Little Puppy. We got a cat, and we got real creative with him. His name is Meow Meow. And then we have a ferret named Sailor.
If you read this newspaper, you'll know everything that's going on IOP.
I think Island Vibes is going to be a game changer for Isle of Palms. It's happy, it's fun, just like our island.
If you want to know what's going on the island, know what the restaurant specials are, know what our politicians are doing, and have a general good idea of all the fun we have out here, pick up the Island Vibe. You'll get the vibe.
Island Vibes is the deal.
Is Sarah's Pizza better nowadays?
Oh, yes, her food is better. It's much better pizza that she had in that pizza joint. Now that she gets to make her own, it's delicious.
How long were you up in Springdale, Dale?
I was the chief there for about 7.5 years when I was there, and it's a great place.
If you were with a small town like Springdale, and then you moved to another, even though it's an island town, it's still a small town. Did it help you when you were at Springdale to understand what you needed to do on Isle of Palms to be successful?
Absolutely. I think I learned a lot. I know I learned a lot in Springdale about building that relationship with the community. And I've really understood what it meant for a police department to have an established relationship with the people that they serve. And that followed suit here. We're still a small town. We're an island and we might have a lot of visitors, but we're still a small town and we have that small town feel that I just love so much. And I think I was definitely more prepared for it coming from a smaller department than I would have been coming from a large department.
It's so obvious that Chief Buchanan, who you took his position, obviously you were hired, he was there for a very long time and everybody knew him. And did you feel a bit intimidated to take those shoes from him?
Absolutely. A lot of ways, plus, Tommy's much taller than I am. I'm very much a little fella compared to him. But
he's got hair too, doesn't he?
He does. He's got me in a lot of areas. I was real nervous about coming in behind somebody who had worked here their entire career, knew the community the way that he did, and had done so many great things here, both figuratively and in reality. I was stepping into some big shoes that I was going to be filling, and I was very nervous.
Was the transition what you thought it would be, or a little more difficult, or how do you feel that went?
Yeah, I think it went really well. I think working out here, you get a much broader view of government and the different areas that it takes for a community to come together, not just the government, but the residents, the businesses, the visitors, and definitely got a much bigger picture of what it takes. And I've learned a lot since I've been here. It's been fantastic, and everybody was so welcoming. That made it easy. They welcomed me like I've been on the island and been an island boy my entire life, which definitely was not the case.
How long have you been there?
This month, June 3rd, was 5 years from the day I put the first IOP uniform on.
In those early stages, you got in, you're going through the transition period, but there has to be a challenge that you didn't really think was going to happen, or you were surprised it happened. What was that challenge?
Oh, my first couple of years were riddled with different things that kind of happened that were beyond our control. We quickly ran into COVID, hurricanes that were coming in and impacting us. And I had always played a role in the hurricane evacuations in the Midlands and just redirecting traffic on the interstate. Totally different when you're here on the island and we're having those storms that are potentially going to impact us. I'll never forget that first storm. I was here. It was 2:00 in the morning and I was out here patrolling, and the National Weather Service called and they said, "It's coming for you." And I said, "What's coming for us?" They said, "The hurricane, it's changed course. It's coming right at you." And I said, "What am I supposed to do with that?"
That's a scary for them to call and say that.
It was. And luckily it stayed off coast and it didn't impact us. But yeah, that's when I think that's when reality hit me about how serious these storms are and how much we can plan and we can have all these potential trajectories that are just going to change. And I think that opened my eyes a lot, that first storm.
35 years ago, I documented Hurricane Hugo. And if you go to www.hugomagazine.com, that's hugomagazine.com, you can literally flip through the digital version of that magazine. And it happened 35 years ago. It's sponsored by SIG Insurance.
And I can say I've looked at some of those pictures that you have there, and that shows just how much of an impact Hugo had here. And what a great thing that we've got that history to look back on so that we can remember what can happen and why we need to be prepared and why we do these preparedness meetings and hurricane expos all the time, because we don't want to have a repeat of that and not be prepared for it.
The Hurricane Center, Dr. Sheets, came several months after the storm, and he was thumbing through the magazine. I was anxious to show it to him. And he thumbed through a couple of pages, and he looked at me, and he goes, "Bill, you saved lives by publishing this." And I said, "Dr. Sheets, I'm just a small publisher. Why are you saying that?" He said, "Because when people look at the magazine, they can see how deadly the storm can be." You know, we ran an article in Island Vibes, and the article was about the new gun laws. I haven't had this many responses. When you go to, it's islandvibesiop.com, you can see the article, and you can see you there in front of the town council. And there were some questions. These are questions people ask us through social media. So if I may, is that okay, sir?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. What is the 29 states that allow you to carry guns without a permit? We'd like to know. And I think that was a stupid law because people are just shooting people just for looking the wrong way. So there's 29 states. Is that what he's saying? There's 29 states?
We were the 29th state to sign a constitutional or permitless carry law into effect. And they're all a little different. You know, some of them, like South Carolina, 18 years old, you can carry. And some of them, it's 21 and older can carry without a permit.
Yeah, you were expecting this coming down the pike, I'm sure.
Well, we had been having discussions. We knew that the law was introduced, and we have had discussions with representatives and senators from the state about it. And, you know, I've talked with Senator Campson about it several times, or called him and left him voicemails about our thoughts on it and those different things. Our Chiefs Association was very much involved from the time that this was introduced and trying to make sure that we had something that gave everything we needed for the Second Amendment. We strongly support the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. And what we were really working on and looking for were the ability to make sure that there were some background checks in place for people before they carried a firearm and some training that people would have to take.
This is one of the questions here. If you haven't been incarcerated or had any felony arrests in over 20 years, charges were not violated, and you're mature, change your lifestyle for the better, can you still get a gun?
So the way it works is you're going to have an indicator, and you would know that from the time you were sentenced that said you're not allowed to carry a firearm. And most of the time when you get to felonies, it's going to be something where you're prohibited, probably federally and in the state. And it's something when law enforcement comes across and they run your name, there'd be a caution indicator that says that you are or are not. If you're really not sure if you can or cannot carry, you can always go back and look at your sentencing guideline and reach out to sccourts.com or .gov, and you can reach out there and ask questions. They'll be able to help you, or go to your local solicitor's office and they can kind of help you get that information.
Here's another one. I think that they should still have background checks no matter what. Down syndrome, insane, stuff like that. Yes, I think there should be background checks. So you don't have to be a felon. If you have challenges in other parts of your life, you can't get a gun, can you?
Correct. You can't buy one from a federal firearms license. Now, where we have the issue with the constitutional carry is if you're not buying it from a business with an FFL and you're buying it from a friend, or it's been gifted, or you've gotten it from a family member passed down, there's no background check for that. And that was our concern, because those individuals can carry under the new law. Now, obviously, if you meet those guidelines, if you have been deemed unable to carry a weapon for a certain period of time based on whatever a doctor says or medical findings, then we would hope that you don't carry. But right now, there's no background check for it unless you buy from a federal firearms license.
Can somebody carry a gun into a building or a restaurant or something like that?
Some buildings you can. So the things to keep in mind would be, obviously, there's council meetings. You can't go into those government buildings. Any government buildings, you need to not carry your firearm. If you're going into schools, you cannot carry your firearm into the school building. And restaurants or businesses have the ability to post a sign that says no concealed weapons allowed. And even though it says concealed weapon, that means no open carry either. And if they've got those posted on their business, then you cannot carry into those businesses either. Or daycares. You can't carry into daycares either.
Can people carry a gun while they're on the beach of Isle of Palms?
Yeah, there's nothing that says they can't. With this new law, they certainly can. We would encourage people that are going to carry that you need to be responsible and smart. And if you're coming out here to go swimming, realize that you don't have anywhere to safely put that firearm while you're out in the water. And if something negligent happens as a result, you will be held accountable for the negligence that happens.
This puts more burden on a police department having this law in place. How have you all changed the way you approach your regular day-to-day activities with regards to this law, as it pertains to this law?
We've always looked at things as though somebody may have the ability to harm us. There shouldn't be a lot of change in that. We approach everything like somebody may want to. That we still respectful, you still treat people right. Now what we're doing is we see it a little bit more, whereas in the past we could stop you if you had a firearm that was out brandished openly. Now we cannot. But if you're committing another crime, we can stop you. It hasn't changed a whole bunch to us, other than we're still getting used to the fact that it can just be out in the open like that, or out in the open inside of a car when we stop it as well. We've always treated those different scenarios as though they may pose a threat to us. And officers should be using tactical advantage, and have been for years, about how they approach somebody. We teach them how to talk to people and how to approach in a safe manner. So none of that really changed. Just still getting used to seeing these firearms out there. And we've not had a whole bunch of them, but getting used to it when we do see it.
When and where are the SLED offering classes?
So SLED will, in the state law, they gave SLED the ability to work with current CWP companies and other organizations to host that training. The best way to find out how that training is available, or when and where it might be available, would be to go to the SLED website, sledsc.gov. Again, that's sled.sc.gov. And you can look on there and they'll have their classes that are available for you. They're not mandatory. We strongly encourage people to take those classes so that you truly understand the Stand Your Ground Doctrine and these different things when people may use a weapon as defense. We want you to have as much information as you can, because we don't want you to be in a position where you think you were right and it turns out you weren't.
Do you have a passion for what you do?
I love what I do. I resigned out of the Army National Guard as an officer in the Army to focus solely on my law enforcement career. There's nothing else I want to do.
Why are you so passionate? Were your family, was there any family members you had that were in the law? Or what causes that passion internally for you?
Well, I do have family in there, but I didn't know that until 2021 when I met my real dad. He was a chief police officer. His dad was a chief officer. I never knew that, never met him until 2021. What really happened to me is I originally got into the job because I needed a job. I needed a full-time job. And then when I got into it and I got out here and I started interacting with the community and feeling that we were making an impact on the safety of the people that I lived around, the places where my kids went, the places where my family were, it really just gave me this sense of being able to help. And that's what drives my passion. It's not every day's not like Hollywood where we're running around saving everybody. But every little thing you do has an impact on everybody's safety, and knowing that we can improve that may lead to a safer future for my kids and for your kids and for the future for everybody. And that's why I'm so passionate.
If we all have passion for what we do, the heights of what we'll go to accomplish that thing we're passionate about is so real. One of the things I've really enjoyed how transparent you are. I have to tell the audience, there's no hidden agendas with you. There's nothing that you just won't tell people if they ask. And I appreciate that, sir. Chief, that's really cool.
I think that's an important part of being an effective law enforcement officer. We got to be open. And I think I've made mistakes in my life, and there's opportunities that people can learn from them. There's opportunities that I can grow and learn from everybody else. And if we're not having open dialogue and we're not being honest with each other, then we're just hindering ourselves from growing. And so I truly believe that's why I try to do that, is so that we can continue. I can continue to grow, and everybody around me can hopefully grow, and we can all be better.
Yes, definitely. We can wake up and learn something to be better that very day if we want to. Thanks for being on the Isle of Palms podcast, and it is sponsored by Island Vibes. And Chief, you mentioned early on in the podcast that it's been a while since. You need to open up the newspaper and you need to hold it in your hands, and you need to think about this podcast. And we appreciate you, and I'm so glad that Sarah's better at making pizzas now and cooking. Sir, I've enjoyed meeting you, and I've enjoyed this podcast, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything.
Thank you for listening or watching the Isle of Palms podcast, produced by Island Vibes, the Isle of Palms upscale monthly publication. Find past and current episodes by visiting isleofpalmspodcast.com.